Alright, we're asked to factor here. If you're factoring, it's often helpful to have a little bit of a roadmap. First, we look through to see if there's a greatest common factor. There's a 1, but that wouldn't change anything. So then we proceed. 2 terms? No, you don't have 2 terms. 3 terms? Yes. And your leading coefficient is other than 1. Alright, there's something in front of the x squared. So this indicates we can either use the box method or factor by grouping. This section covers factor by grouping, so I'll factor this using factor by grouping first, and then I'll go back and use the box method just to show either way does work. For factor by grouping, we're essentially going to write the 3x squared to negative 2, and instead of just plus x, we got to figure out what 2 terms work together to give us that plus x. Alright, so to find that, multiply first times the last. That gives us a negative 6. The factors of negative 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3. For that to be negative, it has to be 1 negative and 1 positive. Okay? We're looking for a difference, because 1's negative and 1's positive, of positive 1, because there's a 1 in front of that x. So that must be that the larger number is positive, the smaller number is negative. This would not give me a difference of positive 1, but this will. Okay, so I'm going to use these 2 values in rewriting this trinomial. Alright, you keep your 3x squared. And your negative 2. Alright, but these middle 2 terms, I'm turning a trinomial into a polynomial of 4 terms. I need to rewrite plus 1x. Alright, plus 1x is now going to be written minus 2x plus 3x. Minus 2x plus 3x. And you see, if I put them together, I just get right back where I started. Alright, the purpose of this is if you have 4 terms, you can use factor by grouping. And by that I mean I group together the first 2 terms, then I group together the second 2 terms, and each time I factor out the GCF. On the first one, the x is the GCF. Standard practice in math is if you factor something out, you put it in front of the parentheses. If I factor out an x from this first term, I would be left with 3x. Factoring out an x from this term, I would be left with negative 2. Then I turn my attention to the next 2 terms. Here this is kind of strange because the GCF is 1. But notice in parentheses I have 3x minus 2 and 3x minus 2. So I really don't want anything to change. So I'm basically going to say that I'm factoring out a positive 1, even though nothing will change when I do that. So if I factor out a positive 1 from 3x, I'm left with 3x. If I factor out a positive 1 from negative 2, I'm left with negative 2. And now you can observe this set of parentheses is exactly the same as this set. That is my common factor. Alright, standard practice in math. Again, this is my common factor. Alright, what's inside parentheses. And the standard practice in math, if you factor something out, you put it in front of the parentheses. So this is what I'm factoring out, the 3x minus 2. And it's in front of this set of parentheses. If I factor out a 3x minus 2 from here, the only thing left is x. If I factor out 3x minus 2 from here, the only thing left is plus 1. So now I have the factored form of our original trinomial. Okay, I could also solve this using the box method, so I'll go ahead and do that now. If you have a leading coefficient other than 1, that indicates you're going to use the box or factor by grouping. So let's see, give ourselves a box here. Slide this over just a bit. You put the first term in the first box, so that's our 3x squared. Last term in the last box is our negative 2, but I don't really care about the sign. down here. Then you have to do a little bit of work to figure out what goes in these two boxes. Okay? That was why we multiplied first times last and got a -6, and then we listed all the factors, and we found out that a difference of +1 can be obtained if I have a -2 and a +3. So I have -2, +3, and one thing that's easy to forget, you have to remember, when we multiplied, we actually ended up with 6x squared, so there's an x here, an x here, an x here, and an x here. Okay? Usually that's too much trouble to write, so just remember that when you fill in these boxes, put your variable there. Okay, now you're basically just looking for the greatest common factor. Going straight up from these two boxes, straight up in these two, then straight across and straight across. Okay, going straight up, the only common factor is a 1. Going straight up here, we can get an x. Going across, we can get 3x. And going across here, we can get a 2. And if there's a negative right there, I pull that out. All right. So in factored form, we would get the same thing, 3x minus 2 and x plus 1, that's +1. All right, so if you use factor by grouping, as is indicated here, or the box method, as is indicated here, you will get the same result.